Okay, hello everyone. Glad to be here with all of our friends from North Carolina, and we have a great presentation for you here today. I have 5 students from Dover Youth to Youth that will be the primary presenters during the material. But I just wanted to say hello, so if you hear my voice, you know who that guy is that's talking in there with the students. I've been coordinating the program since it was started 27 years ago, and I am the contact person if you need anything from us. My information's up there on the screen, and if you have my email, and then that's probably all you need to get anything you need from us. We can send you scripts and other materials if we have it that you might need, or you can feel free to call me in the office and with any questions. And some of you are toolkit owners, and particularly if you have any questions on how to handle the toolkit, then or to implement anything in the toolkit, then please reach out anytime. That's what we're here for. So getting started today, you don't need the toolkit. If you are a toolkit owner, you don't need it with you to do this. And if you are a toolkit owner, a lot of material we're covering relates to policy change, and that would be module 2F in the toolkit. We sent out a handout. We're going to refer to some of the pages in the handout as we go through here. You don't have to have it in order to be part of the webinar, but if you have it printed out, we will be referring to it. We already talked about the chat feature, and any questions, we'll handle those as soon as we can. And I'm the person for any resources. Today's goals are simple. We want to talk about policy change, and particularly youth-driven policy change. We want to give you some ideas for initiatives that you could do in your own coalitions, in your own communities, in your own schools, with your groups, and provide you some tips for implementing those activities and some ideas for some creative things that you could possibly do under the umbrella of policy change. So that's what we're here for, what we're doing. My primary job is to not mess up any of the audio visual, which is extensively used in this presentation, and turn it over to the students who have been practicing this and preparing this presentation for you. So webinar number 4 for the state of North Carolina for this school year, and I'm going to turn it over to the students from Dover Youth to Youth. You guys take it away.
Thank you, Mitch. Hi, everyone. My name is Belle.
My name's Orion.
My name's Mia.
My name's Elsa.
And my name's Grace.
Perfect. So that's all of us up here today. And we are all members of Dover Youth to Youth. Dover Youth to Youth is a large extracurricular drug and alcohol prevention program located in Dover, New Hampshire. And we have around 70 members in our program.
So those 70 members are split up onto 4 different teams that meet at 4 different times throughout the week for about 2 hours apiece. Each of those teams have separate projects, but for bigger ones, they come together and work on it as a whole group.
And our model of youth empowerment is knowledge, then skills, and then action. So what that means is we like our students to have the knowledge and skills they need before they go out and take action.
And when we do take action, we usually take it within these 4 categories, which are education, community awareness, media, and today's topic, policy change.
So, as she said, one way we take action is through education, and we can do that through multiple different styles of presentations, such as classroom presentations, where we give a very theatrical presentation called Sam Skunk, a larger assembly style presentation such as 8 Things, and also regional trainings and even national trainings, including webinars like we're doing here today.
Now, when it comes to community awareness, we do a bunch of different projects. For example, we sometimes do smaller projects like our Sticker Shock campaign, where we would place stickers on different cases of alcohol to warn people about the dangers of underage drinking, to more bigger efforts like our Hilltop Fun Center project.
So the Hilltop Fun Center is like a local fun house near Dover. It has mini golf, batting cages, an arcade, and go-karts, like the one you can see on the screen. This particular go-kart had Bud King of Beers on the hood, and next slide, please, Budweiser on the fender. Now, this naturally is a problem So we created a team to address this issue, and they rehearsed what they were going to say to the manager, then they delivered it. And the manager actually agreed to remove the decals the same day we talked to them, so we consider that a win.
We also do more complex multi-year campaigns like our fridge campaign, which we do to encourage parents to monitor the alcohol in their homes.
We also take a lot of initiative when it comes to media projects. For example, we have about 200 radio PSAs and a bunch of video PSAs that are on our YouTube channel.
And we also do policy change, which is today's topic, as you can see. And so members of our group consider themselves advocates and activists. We teach them the important role advocates have played in the past.
So advocacy means to actively speak, support, or promote an issue or a cause.
While activism, on the other hand, is a type of advocacy that is designed to cause change. It's when people or youth go out there and they work against an opposing force to cause meaningful change in their environment.
So one way that we are both advocates as well as activists is that by getting involved in trying to change a practice or policy that we don't agree with, or getting a certain law or ordinance put in place to help solve a problem we see, we are doing policy change.
Policy change is when activists like us try to get a change to a practice, rule, or law so it helps prevent a problem, like Grace just said.
So when it comes to explaining advocacy and activism to our younger students, we often use civil rights examples. This is because it's something that a lot of people know about, and you can easily find clips of information or documentaries in a local library. So one example of an activist that we often talk about is Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, and this ended up leading to her being one of the head leaders of the Birmingham, Alabama bus boycott.
In addition to Rosa Parks, we also love to use other historical examples from the civil rights time period. We're going to play a short clip for you now.
February 1st, 1960. In Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 black college students sat down at a lunch counter reserved for whites and refused to leave. This sit-in was a direct challenge to Southern tradition. Within 2 months, the sit-ins had spread to 69 cities, from Greensboro to San Antonio, and 2,000 had been arrested. To support the sit-in movement, a national boycott was organized. Those chain stores which discriminated in the South were also picketed in the North.
Do you think that the boycott has had any great impact on these national chains in a city like New York up to this time?
Well, I've already seen statements from some of the executive officers of both Crescent and Woolworth indicating that they are concerned that a decline already been noted and it's just beginning.
I take it then that you are advocating Negroes in New York to stay out of these national chain stores?
Oh, no, that's not true. I'm advocating that American citizens interested in democracy should stay out of chain stores.
And something that we emphasize with this video is those 4 individuals, those 4 young men that you saw at the beginning of that video were right out of high school. All 4 of them were freshmen in college. They were very young, and this is something we really emphasize with our students as well.
So we also use more current examples. For instance, the youth from Parkland, Florida, who worked very hard to strengthen the gun laws in their state. A great example of this is Cameron Kasky, who challenged his Senator Marco Rubio. And this is a great example of youth feeling empowered, resulting in them being able to create change. So we're going to show you a little clip of this video right now.
Senator Rubio, it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and not look at Nicholas Cruz. But the point is, you're here, and there are some people who are not. And I need to ask 2 things of you. Number 1, Chris Grady, can you stand up? This is my friend who's going to the military. I need you to tell him that he's going to live to make it to serve our country. and then we'll get to the other one.
Not only are you going to live to serve our country, you and all of you have a chance to change our country. Change not just our laws, but the way we talk about our laws. So absolutely.
Thank you. And guys, look, this isn't about red and blue. We can't boo people because they're Democrats and boo people because they're Republicans. Anyone who's willing to show change, no matter where they're from, anybody who's willing to start to make a difference is somebody we need on our side here. And this is about people who are for making a difference to save us and people who are against it and prefer money. So, Senator Rubio, can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA?
I wish I could have spoken. I wish I could have asked the NRA lady a question.
I wish the NRA lady I could have talked to, because I would ask her how she can look in the mirror, considering the fact that she has children, but maybe she.
And we don't show that, just as an editorial comment here before the students move on. We don't show that because we have any particular point of view on that. And we know that's a contentious issue. There's strong feelings on both sides, but show that as an example of youth getting involved and having a particular point of view and feeling like they can talk to adults on an equal footing and express their point of view. So it's the example of being able to step up for what you believe in, that why we feel something like that is really valuable for kids to see. We show other examples as well. And moving on, back to you guys.
Right. So generally, there are two types of policy change. There's legislative, where an elected government body has to vote, whether it be a Congress, a county board, a city, a town council, something like that, for example.
And then there's also non-legislative policy change. This means that it doesn't require passing a law. It may only require changing a certain rule or a policy. So we're going to discuss this type of non-legislative policy change first.
And a great example of non-legislative policy change would simply be a restaurant trying to change its regulation or policy on checking IDs.
Or a store's policy on whether they will sell bongs and smoking pipes, or a school's policy on wearing alcohol and tobacco-themed clothing into the building.
When Hilltop Fun Center agreed not to have alcohol logos on their carts, that was basically getting them to change their policy. So there are many different types of policies and different ways that youth can impact those types of policies.
And it's important to remind your youth that this process can vary quite a bit based on what you're trying to change and who has the authority to make that decision.
And on the plus side, the process of non-legislative policy change is often much less bureaucratic compared to the legislative policy change. And these decisions can sometimes be made very quickly. A good example of this was our Citgo gas station advertising project.
A while back, we noticed a Citgo gas station in our town that had a total of 15 tobacco advertisements across the property. Now, naturally, this is a problem because this particular Citgo station is right in between two of our elementary schools, our middle school, and our high school. So it's on pretty much all of the bus routes, and thousands of kids are being exposed to this negative advertising every day.
So the steps we took to address this problem are very similar to the steps you or any other youth group might take to address similar problems. So the first step was we met and we discussed if our group felt that this was a problem. Then we assigned volunteers to form an action group. Now, this action group prepared a letter that they would give to the owner of the business and rehearse how they would go and present it to the business. So now this assigned team would then present in front of our group to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that there are no errors in our writing. So once it's approved, Then the team fully practices and makes sure that they are ready to explain their position and their letter to anyone who might ask questions. Step 5 is the letter was delivered in person to the owner. So it turns out that the owner actually had 2 kids of his own in this school system, and he totally understood why we thought this was an issue. He immediately agreed to take down the signs. Now, this is a photo of the gas station once when the signs were taken down. Or on the next slide, I believe.
Okay, this is a small victory, but an important policy change because it prevented thousands of advertising exposures to young kids since then.
Now, our job was not done, though. There's one very important final step that is often forgot about when doing a project like this. But this step is to thank the business. This business chose to be our ally. They chose to help get these negative messages out of the eyes of thousands of children seeing them every day. And you want to encourage people to do the same thing. So what we did in order to thank this business is we held a press conference complimenting them on their decision and the policy change that they made. Next, we dropped off a homemade thank you card made by all of the kids in our program. And lastly, we emailed the kids and families in our program explaining what happened and encouraging them to use this business if they need to buy gas or anything else.
So the Sicko gas station project involved getting a business to change their way of doing things, their way of doing business. So here are some other examples of local businesses that were targeted for policy change as well.
So, like Grace just mentioned, another great example of getting a business to change its policy is our lobster pot project. So there is a seafood restaurant with a gift shop called Newix in our city, and inside that gift shop there was a member of our community who was browsing it and saw that there was these magnets hanging up for sale. So these magnets say, "I am stoned out of my shell." They have 2 lobsters in a pot smoking a bong. So they brought this to our group, and our group came together and met, and we thought that this was a problem. So we followed the steps that we did for the Sicko project, where we drafted up a letter, practiced it multiple times to the group, drafted up an actual letter in letter form, and we delivered it to the manager at Newix. So we didn't get a response after we dropped this off, but we did go back in 2 weeks later and saw that these magnets were taken off the shelves, so we consider this a victory for our group.
So when you're doing this kind of project, it may seem simple, but it's very critical that you pay attention to detail. And it's important to teach your students to be thorough and systematic. Research and preparation are key, no matter how simple the project or issue seems. For example, our group was concerned about stores selling candy cigarettes and bubble gum that was designed to look like chewing tobacco.
And this became known as our simulated tobacco project. As you can see, there are a couple of different examples on the PowerPoint of different products we were targeting, such as the Stallion candy cigarettes looking very similar to Marlboro cigarettes. And these were all being sold at our local Little League baseball field, which obviously has a very mixed message to youth at that stadium. And so we decided this was a huge issue. So we approached the concession stand about this, and they completely stopped selling Big League chewing gum and other similar products at that concession stand. And it's important to keep in mind that although you can take on smaller issues, like issues in your local community, you don't have to be afraid to take on some of the largest industries around you.
For example, a group in 2006, a group in Kentucky started a letter writing campaign and contacted media. They actually convinced Kohl's, Target, and other stores to stop selling Drinko and other drinking games.
And in 2005, JCPenney responded to criticism from a California group of local advocates by removing alcohol-branded t-shirts from its teen boys department.
And in 2006, the Oregon Partnership, in a campaign that was aided by the New York Times, convinced Macy's to stop selling beer-related t-shirts in their back-to-school catalog. In addition, this same group the following year got Nordstrom's to stop selling these flip-flops that had a hidden flask in them.
So another example of youth taking on the big businesses is the annual Philip Morris protest at the shareholders meeting. So every year there is a shareholders meeting for Philip Morris Tobacco Company. Now, at this meeting, there are a bunch of youth who will go outside and protest the way that this industry and this company is advertising their products. So there will be chants and costumes and visuals to get people's attention and spread the message. Now, some youth will even be able to go into the shareholders meeting if they have a share in the company, so they can speak and ask questions about the way that this company is advertising. So we have a video. Will we have time to show that, Mitch?
I think we'll pass on that video.
Okay.
Keep the pace moving along. You guys are doing great.
Okay.
So policy change can also mean getting a government agency to pass a rule or a regulation. That can also mean changing their current practice or policy. For example, getting your school to adopt a policy of what happens if an athlete gets caught drinking, or how they supervise a school dance. So here's a really simple example of something like that.
So several years ago, our high school, Dover High School's prom committee was trying to decide what keepsake to choose for their prom. And in the catalog that is designed for high school proms, they found pages and pages of glassware for drinking, like martini glasses, beer mugs, champagne flutes, and many other things. So Youth to Youth students challenged this and talked to the prom committee, telling them why they didn't think this was a good idea. And in the end, the Dover prom committee agreed to not consider these as options.
And another example of when we changed government policy is our Wallace Sands Beach project, which I think is the next slide, if you could, Mitch. Thank you. So Wallace Sands Beach is a pretty popular family beach near Dover. It's in Rye, actually. So we went there to see how much cigarette litter was in the sand. We marked off 10 by 10 foot squares with rope, which is around the average size a family would use. Then we sifted through the sand to find cigarette butts, and we found about 200 in each square. That meant there was an average of 40 cigarette butts in a square, and that's absolutely nasty. So we held a press conference and gave reporters our information, and we were on the front page. And when we went back 2 years later, it was still a problem, but much less so. The state recreation people were so embarrassed, they started putting up signs and receptacles for people to put their cigarette butts in at that beach and others around the state, which we considered a win.
So when it comes to taking on big policy change efforts like this, it can be kind of hard to come up with your own ideas. But one thing you can do that is so helpful is piggybacking on other national efforts. So for example, if you sign up to receive emails from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, they'll give you updates on projects they're doing and influence you on ways you might be able to change policy at a national level or even at a local level. So you'll get background info and instructions on how you can help. So this allows you to participate in this policy change and in these national efforts, and to get your youth to think about advocacy and policy change, but not pressure them to come up with their own issues from scratch.
So a good example of this is in 2011, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids found out that the Orange Bowl was being sponsored by Camacho Cigars. So they organized a national effort to get the Orange Bowl Committee and the NCAA to drop Camacho Cigars as their sponsor. What they did is they asked a ton of activists across the country to get involved and contact key decision makers within the issue. This generated over 5,000 messages. There were so many messages that were sent that a representative of the Orange Bowl Committee actually had to ask them to stop sending the messages. And as a result, the Orange Bowl did drop Camacho Cigars as their sponsor.
Now, you can also use these emails and these national efforts as a way to come up with your own ideas on how you can affect policy change. For example, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids had a petition where people could sign it online saying that they agree with the fact that the tobacco industry, or that the FDA should ban flavored tobacco products. Now, as Dover Youth, we thought it would be a cool idea if we could have something that's actually a physical thing that we could send to the FDA to show how many people believe in this cause. So what we did was we made these palm cards that have information on the front and back, and then at the bottom of the back, it says, "I am asking the FDA to protect kids from the tobacco industry's sweet tricks. Please ban candy flavors in all of the tobacco products." Now, they used these cards, and we talked to people in our community, including teachers, other youth advocates, and family members, asking them if they will sign this card. Once when we got hundreds of these cards signed, we put them in a box along with a letter and sent them to the FDA. This ended up leading to the FDA emailing us, asking us to come down and talk to them about this cause and why we believe in it so much and why we think this needs to be changed. A 5-member team of youth students went down to the FDA, and we spoke with them with visuals and talking about how the tobacco industry has attracted kids in the past and is doing the same thing. We started a small local project, but because of this project, we were able to be heard by the people who are actually making the decisions in our country. So although it started as a small project, it ended up helping towards a very important national policy change.
And another way to pursue policy change is through the legislative process, which is the process of changing or passing a law that would help solve your problem. For example, increasing penalties for drinking while intoxicated would require a legislative vote, which makes it a legislative policy change.
So our members get involved in the legislative process in a couple of different ways. One way is to go and testify at the public hearing on a proposal that somebody else has proposed. For example, last year, Dover Youth Youth went to the State House and spoke against the proposal to legalize marijuana. And we're going to do we have time to play that video, Mitch?
Yes, we do.
All right. So we're going to show a video of what it would look like if you are at a testimony for any type of product, but this is for, or this is against some type of, this is for a testimony against some type of beer product, right?
This is testifying in favor of increasing the beer tax, but we're basically showing this to you. If you've never been to the legislature and you're testifying, and pretty much all the state legislatures do it the same way. If you're testifying on an issue, you're not testifying to all of the senators, all of the members of the House. You're testifying to a subcommittee that's hearing that issue. And it would look something like this. This is from New Hampshire.
I'm here today to speak in favor of HB 166. I recognize that this bill would increase the tax on beer, and while I support that, I would really like to focus my testimony on what will happen with the money that will be raised. And I would really like to see this money go to the alcohol fund and alcohol prevention programs.
So the committee hearing, more typically, as you see on the still photo there, we have a 2 or 3 member team prepare the testimony, and then they would alternate delivering the paragraphs. It's almost always done everywhere in writing. So you prepare it in writing and then you deliver it orally to the subcommittee. So you might be talking to 10 or 12 members of the House of Representatives, not the entire body, which that almost never happens no matter who you are. And so that can be on any issue anyone has raised. Any person can testify on that. Okay, back to all of you.
So another way your youth can get involved in the legislative process is through proposing your own state law. In fact, we proposed 3 of our own state laws, including the New Hampshire's party host law, which makes it illegal for anyone to host an underage drinking party in New Hampshire.
Another great example is our Zigzag project. So we saw that though tobacco and marijuana were both illegal for minors to buy, the rolling papers were not. So what we did is we sent our students into 16 different stores to see if they were able to purchase the rolling papers. And as a result, 4 out of the 16 stores did allow our students to purchase. What we did next, like we do with many of our projects, is we drafted up letters and sent them to the stores explaining why we didn't think this was a good idea. But we took this project to the next level and proposed a law to the state legislature by getting a state rep to sponsor the proposal. Our students went and testified before the New Hampshire legislature, and in 2001, this bill passed, making it illegal in our state for minors to purchase or possess rolling papers.
And we also have proposed and passed 8 of our own city ordinances. And something that we explain to our youth is an ordinance is just a law that only applies to a city. So one of these city ordinances required the legal age to buy any tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, to be raised to 21. And as we know, this has now become a national effort.
So different states have somewhat different procedures for getting a law or a bill passed.
And these can also vary from your own state to your city. So it will vary based on if you're trying to pass a state law or a city ordinance.
So although there are different steps, there are some predictable steps that you can take when it comes to participating in any type of legislative policy change. So the first step is to research your issue. Make sure you know if there's any laws or ordinances that are already in place that are similar, or so you know all of the things you need to know in factual evidence around this specific policy change. Step number 2 is develop your group's position on the issue. So figure out if you think this is something that policy change will help and that you believe this is truly an issue that needs to be changed. Step 3 is if this is an idea you're coming up with on your own, you need to find a sponsor. So this would be a member of whatever legislative body you are trying to pass this bill in. So if you were trying to pass it with the New Hampshire Senate, you would need a senator. Now, step 4 is to prepare your testimony. Have it in writing and make sure it is thought out and concise and gives all the information it needs to give without being insanely long. Step 5 is to prepare your visuals. So visuals are very helpful when it comes to trying to get your point across. For example, in the Zigzag project, a visual we used was a stand-up with a bunch of different rolling papers that youth were able to purchase. Now, the 6th step is to educate others. So this could be educating parents, the public, schools, or other youth groups. So you could hold a press conference and create a press release, or you can contact other people directly. Now, step 7 is to practice your presentation and answering questions. Make sure that you have the presentation skills you need to do your testimony and get your point across effectively. And make sure you know how to answer any questions that might be asked of you. Now, the 8th step is to consider contacting other legislators. So this could be sending them letters, emails, or calling them just to make sure they know about this piece of legislation that you are passionate about and that they have facts behind it so they know how they might want to vote. Now, the next step, step number 9, is to deliver your testimony at a public hearing. Once when you have all the presentation skills you need and you know what you're doing, this is that big step that we talked about earlier and showed you videos of. Now, your job is not done though. The 10th step is to evaluate. So how did it go? If it passed, you want to make sure that you recognize the people that supported you and that you see if there's any need for local education like signs or another press release to alert people about this law. While if it didn't pass, you want to either start preparing for next time and see what you could do better, or try to figure out other solutions to the same problem if you don't think policy change will help this time.
So the easiest way to make those steps clear to you guys is to apply them to an actual example. So we're now going to illustrate these 10 steps through a case study of an ordinance we got banning smoking at a large downtown park in our town of Dover.
And before the students explain this project, I just want to bring to the audience's attention, if you get to a point where you want to teach your youth how to go about the process, the steps of engaging in the process of a legislative policy change, The following sequence of PowerPoint frames is really good for that. And there's a video that goes with this at a point, and we're going to show you a part of that. So if you took out of this presentation, this next sequence, you could teach in just a few minutes, any group of youth, the basic steps, using this as an illustration, the basic steps of doing a legislative policy change. In this case, the example relates to a city ordinance that was passed in Dover. Okay, back to you.
All right, so this specific park that we're referring to is located in Dover, New Hampshire, and it's called the Henry Law Park. As you can see in these pictures, this is a huge park located right in our downtown area. It has a band shell pavilion where a lot of local concerts happen, very family friendly. It has a playground in the back, and it's located right next to the New Hampshire Children's Museum. And so obviously we thought this was a huge issue.
So what we did is our first step was the research step. So we checked ordinances in our town and found that smoking was in fact not restricted in this area. Then we spoke to the director of the parks and we asked him what he thought, and he said he too considered smoking to be a problem. We then took a ton of photos of the area and we did an on-site survey where we sent some of our youth out to the park to see how many cigarette butts they could pick up in 30 minutes. And as a result, they picked up just under 1,000.
And the next step is develop your position. Our group considered the area and decided that it did in fact make sense to make it a non-smoking area. We felt like it was a litter issue, a nuisance to people at music events, and it wasn't keeping with the kid-friendly theme of the location.
And the third step is to find a sponsor. So we asked the mayor to sponsor our proposal for this project, and he agreed.
And next, it was finally time to start prepping our testimony. So when we do any legislative project, we typically have a 3-person team draft the testimony. And in this case, we did the same thing. They presented this testimony back to our entire group. They took comments and suggestions, revised that until our entire group agreed upon what was going to be said during the testimony.
So the next step, step 5, is visuals. And we don't always use visuals, but in this case, we definitely thought that our visuals would help make our point. So we first had a jar that had a ton of the cigarette butts that we had collected during our research phase. We also had handouts that we gave to each of the members of the committee, and we had a PowerPoint that illustrated the boundaries of the area we wanted to be restricted, as well as a large Google Earth map of the park that we put on the easel.
And step 6 is educate others. We reached out to the Rotary Club, the Children's Museum director, as mentioned before, and parents, but we chose not to do a press conference, although normally we would do one.
The 7th step was to prepare your testimony and practice, practice, practice. And then you might think you've done enough practicing, but you need to do some more practice. So we did this exactly like we would at the actual testimony in front of our group, like we did with all of the other projects beforehand, when we took questions and tried to answer them as best as possible.
And yeah, so step 8 is other contact with legislators. Not much in this case. We did get the Children's Museum, which is mentioned before, right next to the park to write the council and support.
So at this step, this would be the time that typically we would reach out and we'd have a group of team prepared to call different legislators on whatever legislative body to educate them about the issue beforehand. Our next step, step 9, was finally time to deliver the testimony. So we're actually going to play a video for you that's a teaching tool that we created that Mitch referred to earlier. So this is the 3-person team that was working on this testimony. And as you'll see throughout the video, different tips will pop up throughout it, kind of advising you on what to do during a testimony.
And again, this is a great training tool. If you're working with youth, they can visualize what testimony would look like. In our city council, you're standing when you deliver it. In many legislative bodies, you'd be seated at a table. That's not the format here. So that kind of minor thing can vary, but this is a great example if students are preparing of sort of getting your testimony pulled together, what it looks like. And again, the graphics that are in there, the text, the reminders, the tips, that's something we edited in to make it a training tool. And we would, if you have the toolkit, you already have this and the PowerPoint. If not, we would certainly help you get ready if you had some kids to train. Here's the video.
I'm here today to speak in favor of HT.
And that's the wrong video. Please stand by. And there we go.
7B, Chapter 131-18, Offenses, Use of Tobacco Products, sponsored by Mayor Trefethen by request.
This public hearing is open. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter?
Thanks. So, hello, my name is Brian Eldridge. I'm a junior at Dover High School.
I'm Chase Rachosi, and I'm a freshman at Dover High School.
I'm Avery Munoz. I'm an 8th grader at Dover Middle School. So, we are all members of Youth and are here to speak in favor of this proposed ordinance change. Dover Youth is an underage drinking and drug abuse prevention program run through the outreach department of the Dover Police Department. There are about 70 plus. So we have proposed this ordinance change, which would restrict smoking in portions of Henry Law Park, and more specifically in front of the band shell, as well as in front of the Dover Children's Museum.
So we've recently found out that there's been a large amount of smoking going on in the upper section of Henry Law Park near the Dover Rotary Band Shell. We noticed this problem last year during the Kachiko Art Festival shows, and a lot of us on our own time have just been there and noticed a large amount of smoking going on. There's also been a considerable amount of smoking going on near the premises of the playground area in the rear near the Dover indoor pool. And that concerns us a lot because there's, of course, a large amount of children that use that playground area. So up here on the PowerPoint, if you look around you, we've got a couple of visuals. We've displayed just a portion of the ground at Henry Law Park. This is in the upper section of Henry Law Park. And if you can see, there's a lot of cigarette butts just all around there. And so we noticed this. And so this past summer, during our annual youth summer training program, we sent a team of our own youth up to Henry Law Park. And just for a quick half an hour, we had them picked up as enthusiastically supports the idea. The Dover Chamber of Commerce's executive director also supports the idea. Lastly, we contacted the Dover Rotary Club, and they sponsored the Dover Rotary Band Shell, and they made a big investment in the park in general, including the Dover Rotary Gardens. And they're also in favor of restricting smoking in this part of the park.
Dover Youth would also be willing to help fundraise, to help pay for any signage that would need to go up just around the fenced area and around the playground, just so that there's no confusion whether it is a smoking or a smoke-free area.
So that is definitely something worthwhile to watch with your group if you plan on participating in any kind of legislative policy change.
And then step 10 is evaluate. How did it go? The bill passed unanimously, but our job was not done. We agreed to pay for the signs needed to be installed around the restricted portion of the park. As you can see.
And Mitch, before we go any further, do we have time to do retail responsibility?
What I'd like to do is just mention it to them and do a quick abbreviated version of that, just to, because the steps are in their handout. And a little bit about lobbying, which is my part. So depending on your funding source, you may be restricted on what you personally can do from as a result of what you can do in terms of lobbying. So lobbying is trying to influence a legislator on their vote. So, and many of you, so for example, if you have a drug-free communities grant, you would be specifically restricted from spending any of that grant money to try to influence the vote of a legislator. So the easy way to handle that is to not do that. So, but the thing to understand when you're working with youth in particular, and anyone really, is no matter who you are, you all have a right to speak to your legislator and express your point of view. The thing is, you just can't spend grant money to accomplish that. So for example, what things you can't do. You can't take DFC money or probably any of your state grant money and buy signs that say support House Bill 1522. If you are working and you're paid for a grant and probably on duty, you might not want to go there and express how the legislature should vote. If you're on your own time, if you take a day off, then you are just there as a citizen, then that's a whole different story. So the thing is, the government doesn't want to give you money to turn around and lobby the government. So, and that makes sense. So you shouldn't have, government money to give you an unfair advantage to get a vote to go your way. So the way to stay out of trouble is to honor that goal. So understand the things you can do. You can educate an elected representative about a problem, give them information about stats on underage drinking stats or other kinds of information, and that's perfectly fine to give them information and educate a legislator. That's different from twisting their arm to vote a certain way. And the other thing you can do is it is not lobbying if you train your students on how to participate in the legislative process. If you showed them the PowerPoint we just showed you and played the video, you are not lobbying if you do that. And the students themselves, I assume the students you work with, if you have a youth group, are not paid employees. So as volunteers, they're free to speak to their legislator and express their point of view any way they want to. And lastly, know what you can and can't do. There are funders that we have funders in New Hampshire, nonprofits that do lobbying, and if they fund something, they don't mind if you use that money that way. But know when you're restricted and honor the restrictions. And if in doubt, check with your grant advisor or check with your legal authorities if you have any doubt. But if you follow those basic principles, you will stay out of any trouble with the issue of lobbying.
So as we went over before, there are some very logical steps and predictable steps that you can follow to do a legislative policy change project. There are also some predictable steps that we'll go over very briefly for any kind of non-legislative policy change project. One example that we like to use to demonstrate this is our retail responsibility project. So retail responsibility in general is when you try to convince a store or retailer to not sell a certain product, or at least not sell it to a certain age group. So in 2015, we went to the 3 largest malls in New Hampshire to do some investigation. And that's really the first step, to see what's out there, to scan the environment. We went through and we saw multiple different things that you can see on the PowerPoint. Our next step was to decide if it was a problem. So as a group, we came together, discussed what we saw, and of course, we thought this was a huge problem. All of these products were out there in our community. The next step, step 3, was to try to purchase these products. In this case, it's extremely important to take careful documentation of each product that was able to be purchased, where it was purchased, and the age and person who was able to get that product. So here are a bunch of examples, different games. We have different costumes, phone cases, hats, pretty much anything you can imagine we found in these different stores, and a lot of them were sold to extremely young ages, including these fake tampons that not only promote the use of an illegal drug in New Hampshire, but also conceal it, so hiding it from adults in our community. Again, costumes, posters, and a skateboard that was bought by a 9-year-old. Our next step was to create a display out of all of these different items. Once we did this, we were able to show this to the public. And our next step was to prepare and deliver letters. So in this case, we had 2 different kinds of letters. The first one was thanking stores for not selling products to minors. And the second one was explaining to the stores that did sell to us the problems that we had with that. We got some positive response and some negative response. After we did this, it was time to inform the public. So inform them about the project, the problem, and the goals, and what we were trying to accomplish. Finally, it was time to plan other activities. So we did multiple different presentations to the Rotary Club and PTA in this case. Finally, it was time to evaluate. So really ask ourselves, can we do better? Should we keep going with this activity? In this case, we decided to continue this project every year to challenge the stores to do better, to change their policies and stick to them.
Okay, so we're going to bring that in for a landing right there. So there's a lot of benefits to policy change, and you guys really highlighted how to get there, and on both the non-legislative and legislative parts. If any of our many attendees have any questions, you can punch that in on chat, and that's being monitored by the our hosts that have set us up here. And while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, I'd just like to have the 5 of you just briefly introduce yourself, how long you've been engaged in the program, where you are in school. They might be wondering how old you are, that sort of thing. So go ahead. We'll start with you, Belle.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Isabel Wensley. I am a freshman in college, and I've been in Dover Youth Team for 8 years now. And I'm studying public health primarily because of the work that I did with this group.
Hi, my name is Elsa. I'm a sophomore at Dover High School, and this is my 5th year in Dover Youth to Youth.
Hi, my name is Grace Lunny. I am a junior, and I'm 16 years old, and this is my 6th year in Youth to Youth.
Hi, my name is Orion. I am in 8th grade, and this is my 3rd year in Youth to Youth.
Hi, my name's Mia. I'm in 8th grade, and this is my 3rd year in Youth to Youth as well.
Okay, and you guys did a great job, a very comprehensive job, and well presented. Do we have any questions out there of either the students about their program, about policy change, or any of the individual projects that were described?
I do not have any questions that have come through yet. I do have a comment that you guys did a great job, that you know your stuff. I do have one now. Let's see, what is the age range for the group? Their youth group is just for high school students. So you've got some middle school students here.
Yep.
So our group ranges from 6th grade to seniors in high school, as well as our university team. We usually emphasize the fact that when it comes to making a group like this, it is very beneficial to start at younger ages because, for example, I'm a very busy person. When I was in middle school, I played soccer, I did drama club, I was in youth. And because most kids are more busy when they're younger, they're more likely to take on new things. So if I didn't join youth when I was younger, at this point in my life, I might have been too busy with soccer or whatever, so I wouldn't have been able to do youth. So if you are looking into trying to get more people in your program, it's really great to start them at like 6th grade. So they are part of the program, they realize how important it is to them. So later on, if they do have scheduling conflicts or something like that, they are more likely to make the decision to stay in youth instead of adding another thing to their schedule.
And the other thing that why we really like starting in 6th grade is and Mia and Orion here are great examples of that. They're in 8th grade. So if I had started in 9th grade, the 2 of them wouldn't be in the program, And they, now what they have is 3 years of experience. So they're at the end of 8th grade. So they have virtually 3 full years of experience. By the time they hit 9th grade, they're going to be ready to rock and roll, and because they're already doing it now in 8th grade, as opposed to, and many groups do that. They start in 9th grade, and that works for people. But we found a lot of advantage if you can start younger. A lot of advantages that, including what Elsa was talking about, is very important.
I have a note here, yeah, wanting to know what your cat's name is. I guess maybe someone saw a cat by. They were asking what the cat's name was.
Was it for me?
What's your cat's name?
Me?
Yeah, I don't think anybody else has a cat.
One of them is named Rebel and the other one's named Vivi. Yeah, very Star Wars oriented there.
Well, guys, I have continuous comments that you guys did a great job as always. I did have a question about the material and the presentation from today. All of this will be uploaded to our help desk, of course, the slides, the webinar itself. You can reach out to myself or Dana, of course, for any questions that you have if we need to get you in touch with you, if you have something that you think of after. Let's see, I do have another one here. Do the ideas the group focuses on come from youth themselves or from the issues the program coordinators find? That's a great question.
So the big thing is people bring it in, either people in our community or members of our group bring it in. And we think and we gather as a group and say, is this something that we want to take on? Is this a problem to us? Or is it something that we can focus on either at a later time or we just don't need to focus on at all? So of course, Mitch at the beginning of each meeting will say, like, bring in a newspaper article of either something that's going on in our nation or something that we've accomplished. But that doesn't really have a great impact on what we do as a group.
So oftentimes our adult advisors will recommend ideas of things for us to do, but a lot of times it is first of all, it is the youth deciding after the advisors bring it up that, yeah, we want to take action on it. And other times it's something that we see on our own and we feel is important and we bring it to the table. For example, one of my friends in the program, Stone, we were at a store doing sticker shock and he saw this ad that said, study, sleep, natty, repeat. And looking at that, he decided that that was inappropriate and it was 100% not something that you want to be putting, like the idea of education in school with drinking. So he brought this to the group and discussed why he thought it was a problem, and then it was something we all took action on. So it really does vary, although we do have our adult advisors helping to guide us and helping us find ideas. A lot of them are ones we come up with.
And as on top of that, just to add to that, when our advisors do bring us a project, I'd really like to emphasize that we always have an open conversation about it. So our advisors will introduce a topic and typically they'll take a step back after that and we'll talk openly and honestly for sometimes an entire meeting about the topic until we come to a consensus as a group whether or not we want to take action on that.
So the answer, I guess, is all of the above. The Heart Association might send me an email asking, would the students come and testify in favor of a certain tobacco law that they'd sponsored? So the requests can come from outside groups looking for our support. We have, in the case of that Nuix magnet thing, that was somebody just attacking me as a way of reaching the students and suggesting the students might want to do something about it. So that was a citizen's idea. And then, campaign for tobacco-free kids, or the U.S. Alcohol Policy Alliance has an initiative, or National Drug Facts Week might suggest certain activities they're doing, and I'll bring that to their attention. Say, are you interested in piggybacking on that? So the ideas come from all over.
Oh. I have a couple other questions here. first, how large is your group? How many members do you have? And then they are wanting to know if this is only in Dover, or do you have other chapters?
So we have about 70 members in our entire group, 6 through high school, and then we have our additional university team. Belle, do you want to talk about the second question?
So Dover Youth to Youth is part of, we work very closely with the Granite Youth Alliance, which is another thing that is a lot like what we do, and it has chapters all across the state of New Hampshire through the schools. So there's a lot of schools that have youth to youth groups like ours. So I'm actually from Newmarket, which is a small town that's near Dover, and we've had a group for about 7 years that is a lot like Dover Youth to Youth, but we just do things a little bit differently because we are in a school and we are a school-sponsored program.
We have a network of communities and coalitions that we work with across the country that are using our tools and our resources and trying to follow that sort of the approach and model that we use, the knowledge, skills, action model of youth empowerment. And we work very closely with a lot of those places, and anyone out there that has a youth group and wants to be sort of connected with us, then just reach out to me and let me know that. And but we don't have chapters per se where we are supervising what people do. That we provide resource information, training for people that want to replicate what we're doing, but we don't prescribe. We don't prescribe or supervise what people are doing in other communities. We provide that technical assistance and help you get where you want to go.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Was there another question, or was that?
No, that was it. It's just that, this really speaks highly of the students' work and the skills that the outside community asks for your help. So you guys do an awesome job as always. And I want to remind everyone that we are going to have 2 more webinars between now and the end of the year. So make sure you go to our training calendar and register for those. We will, of course, send out a certificate within the next week, as well as a link for a survey from today's training. And again, all of this material will be uploaded online for you to go back and take a look at. So Dana, we appreciate it. All of you guys from Dover Youth to Youth, you guys are wonderful. We appreciate you in North Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you guys soon.